across the country.
In the meantime, despite trending rumors in some national dailies and social media platforms that INEC may postpone the 2019 election due to anticipated violence, is this another manifestation of fake news?
A misrepresentation of facts, so we are not postponing. To be sure, INEC has no plan to postpone the 2019 general election.
Chairman of the Presidential Committee on the Decongestion of Prisons, Justice Ishaq Bello, has warned judges of lower courts across the country to desist from introducing issues alien to the nation's law into their judgments. Justice Ishaq Bello gave the warning after inspecting prisons in Kebbi and Sokoto states.
On the citizenry, it is unjustifiable, and this must be addressed. We had taken some steps before I left Kebbi State, and today I had discussed this with the head of court and the Attorney General of the Federation, and this has to be addressed, and it will be addressed.
Governor Abdulaziz Yari of Zamfara State says the people of Zamfara State will always remain grateful to President Muhammadu Buhari for his intervention in putting a halt to the wanton destruction of lives and property by armed bandits in the state after several years of neglect in which the people were left to their fate. The governor stated this while recounting his people's experience when Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, in company of some other ministers, visited him in the government house, Gusau.
His magnanimity, not even sending. He organized in 2016 Army Administration Day in Zamfara State, and he wears soldiers' uniform for Zamfara people for Nigeria. He said, since I was removed 85 as a soldier, I had never wear uniform soldier till here. So that shows how President he is concerned with his people and how mindful he is about the issue of security.
Unknown to many, what we face in Zamfara is probably worse than what is being faced in Benue, Taraba, and Plateau combined. But because of our traducers who are insistent on putting a religious and ethnic spin on an issue that is sometimes more of demography, environment, and most times sheer criminality, the attention that ought to be put on Zamfara is not being put there.
The federal government has set up a high-powered interministerial committee to carry out a comprehensive investigation on the earth tremor that occurred recently in some parts of the nation's capital, Abuja. FCT Minister Mohammed Musa Bello announced this while briefing newsmen after the meeting of the Federal Executive Council. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that issues relating to the economy as well as the enhancement of the nation's electoral process were also discussed.
Use this medium to reassure that there is no cause for concern, and as a matter of fact, within the vicinity of the Pape area, the Federal Ministry of Power Works and Housing will send in their experts to just do some structural assessment of the properties around there, just to make sure that everything is safe. But at some point in the future, when this interministerial committee looks at this matter very closely, we'll be in a position to really give full and comprehensive situation report to the nation. But for now, there's no cause for alarm whatsoever.
There are strong indications that the long-awaited release of excess water from Lagdo Dam by Cameroonian authorities has finally come, following the upsurge in the volume of water at River Benue. While government is doing everything to safeguard lives and property in the event of the looming disaster, the nonchalant disposition of the people living along waterways towards relocation is a big challenge in Adamawa State.
Right now, we have also identified some safer areas in all the 7 local governments, starting from Fufore down to Lamorde.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Femi and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
What makes a Niger mom powerful?
I trust the power of Dettol's One Capful for bathing. The power of Dettol's One Capful protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Be 100% sure.
Well, when I was growing up, it wasn't an easy thing for us because my parents were struggling. That's why when I started playing basketball, I need to play, I need to struggle, I need to achieve. I want to make something out of it. I graduated from the Milo Secondary School games to the senior league. Then they called me that I should come and play Junior World Cup qualifiers. Following year, I was invited to the senior national team. I've been awarded as the most valuable player 5 times. My teammates, they made it possible. Basketball, they gave me the opportunity to have my own basketball camp, giving back to the society. Because you know what you've passed through. I need to show the kids that basketball really changed my life. My name is Nkechi, and this is our journey.
Good food, good life.
News which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
Helen! Your kitchen gets 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
This also gets a 10. Should we see the toilet now?
Sure.
This gets just 1.
It is clean.
But not perfect 10.
Better than my detergent and bleach? Impossible.
Challenge? Try the new Apic 10X.
Compared to bleach and detergent, Apic sticker formulation removes yellow stains times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow.
Now you also take that
Apic 10X challenge.
Also available in 200 ml pack.
The new approach to funding medium and small enterprises is trailing key players in the financial sector, with many describing it as the magic that will solve the challenges associated with funding. Comfort Amadou has more on these developments.
We begin with information technology, where technological disruption is changing the face of financial transactions the world over, as the quest for financial inclusion drives service providers and policymakers deeper into trenches of the unbanked. With governments seeking to diversify the economy, the financial structure to make this happen is what now captures the attention of both the policymakers and the service providers.
So technology will give us access to those areas that we couldn't, brick and mortar wouldn't reach, because with your smartphone, with your phone, you could do various financial services. And that's why we're driving at the forefront of driving the Share Agency Network Expansion Facility.
Accessibility to credit facilities have been a challenge for SMEs, but the Chief Executive Officer to the Development Bank of Nigeria, Tony Okpanachi, says the collateral-free loan scheme introduced will change the narratives on credit facilities.
Encouraging a lot of financial institutions to use the National Collateral Registry, where they can use movable assets to be able to borrow from banks. That is in the right direction. So you don't necessarily have to have a building, a property, but if you have movable assets, to be able to reach out to your bank. Secondly, we're also encouraging financial institutions to see how they can do cash flow lending, where it's based on your business cash flow that they will lend to you, not necessarily asking for collaterals.
And the National Pension Commission says it has recovered 14.38 billion naira from employers who had been deducting the pension contributions of the employees but failed to remit the funds into the workers' retirement savings account with their respective pension fund administrators. Acting Director General PEMCON, Aisha Dahir Umar, says the funds included the penalty of 6.96 billion naira that the employers were made to pay. A quick look at trading figures on the floor of the stock exchange. And that's business news for now. I'm Comfort Amadou. Thanks for being there.
Thank you very much, Comfort, for the business package. Next for us now, we'll take a look at the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
And welcome to our newspaper review segment. We have our usual reviewer of the dailies, Bayo Achoebe, with us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Femi. Welcome to set. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, good to see you. Let us we'll begin with the front pages, as we always do. I have the Punch. I also have the Daily Sun. The lead stories, of course, they are on politics, but different facets of politics. Let's begin with the Daily Sun. And the lead story says 2019, federal government to set up electoral court. That's with two riders, vote bias, risk imprisonment. PDP will wait and see. 2019, federal government to set up electoral court. And then you have an earpiece there, that's a rejoinder from the former head of state to the APC chairman. And also there on the front page of the Daily Sun is a story that broke yesterday, at least on the front pages of the papers. It's a second lead story below the photograph out of the Federal Executive Council meeting. Ambode, that's the kicker. Tinubu sticks to his guns with riders there, refuses to be persuaded on governor's second term, asks aspirants to mobilize for primaries. Party, no consensus candidate. Ambode no rift with ex-governor. Now, details of that story can be found on page 5. But the story of the situation in Lagos, political situation in Lagos, is the lead for the Punch newspaper. And it has a double-decker headline coming with a kicker, 2019. Buhari, Ajimobi, Akiolu, that's about Lagos, in last-minute move to save Ambode. With the rider, no rift between Tinubu and me, and that's according to Ambode, who's governor of Lagos.
That seems to be the focus, too, on some other dailies. The Guardian, for instance, focuses on the intervention by the presidency. Buhari summons Tinubu over rift with Ambode. And some riders, fake OK's bill, that is coming from the fake meeting, fake OK's bill to set up Electoral Offences Commission. No plan to postpone 2019 general elections, says INEC. And PDP hails verdict against president. Now, that is the political news, but then some other security news are down the Guardian. IPOB security agencies set for showdown. No going back on tomorrow's lockdown. That is Biafra group talking. Army threatens to deal with misguided elements, while police youth clash in Anambra, 2 killed. These are security stories, also sharing the front page of the Guardian with political stories.
Well, it's very interesting. The Ambode story is very curious because Governor Akinwumi Ambode yesterday at Ekpe said, I want you to know that there is no fighting anywhere, that the leader Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and my good self are not in any fight. And our party will return, still remain the party to beat. This was Governor Ambode's reaction yesterday at Ekpe. Meanwhile, Governor Ambode, who had acquired expression of interest from, actually submitted his form to the APC Secretariat yesterday. Meanwhile, the APC Lagos representative of the party also said that it is indication of democracy for persons to express their opposition if they want, and that is what is being shown in Lagos. And those who have indicated their interest are only taking advantage of the opportunity of democracy. And Governor Ambode, he says, still remains the one to be beaten. Meanwhile, most papers are also referring to overtures being made to intercede between what the governor has denied as a rift and what Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has not been indicated on records to say that there is a crisis brewing on. So political permutations going on. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari, a day after being given an expression of interest form, submitted his nomination form to the Petty Secretariat yesterday. He was compelled to pay 100 naira to acquire a digital membership form by party chairman Oshiomhole. And he said, I am here in person among friends and colleagues to put my name forward to my party, APC, seeking nomination to contest the presidential election. So aspirant Muhammadu Buhari has declared, fellow party members, I am taking this step with humility, sense of responsibility, and unquestionable desire to strive and protect the interests of all Nigerians. He also cautioned that we must not allow those who brought Nigeria to its knees from 1999 to 2015 to come and take us back to where we were from.
Now,
I was just wondering, just on the Lagos story, are you saying that there is no rift, there's no conflict as to whether or not the Asiwaju, that's Bola Ahmed Tinubu, would support the incumbent governor for a second term or otherwise?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm reporting that Governor Akinwumi Ambode said he has no fight with Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and it is not on record that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has said he has any axe to grind with Akinwumi Ambode. However, there are overtures, like the paper indicated, that even the president is trying to intercede. Will the president intercede if there is no rift?
Absolutely.
Those are the questions.
And like they say, there's no smoke without fire. Perhaps the fact that there are more aspirants coming up in Lagos under the APC gives the notion that there are people who are being sponsored by the powerful blocs. That is possibly, we didn't see this coming in the first instance. We didn't see any political disagreement in Lagos before now.
But it's not unusual with Lagos, like we pointed out yesterday. It's reminiscent.
It had been brewing.
Yes.
It had been brewing. And of course, as you said, the intercession is on. The Punch is reporting the president, Ajimobi, and Oba Akiolu of Lagos in the last-minute move to save Ambode. When the governor says no rift between himself and Tinubu, of course, that's the politically correct thing to say at this time. You couldn't possibly be beating your chest if you're having intercessors already stepping in for this matter. But let's return to other stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper, this time above the nameplate and also beside two earpieces. Now, Benue Assembly suspends 3 local government chairmen. Benue Assembly suspends 3 local government chairmen. Details of that story can be found on page 39. Now, oil price nears $80 as Nigeria's output rises. That's on page 25. Stunted economy. APC berates The Economist and HSBC for predicting Buhari's defeat. Details can be found on page 8. 2 earpieces there. Federal government, that's to say EFCC rather, hands over seized houses to Vaughan, Petard, and others. That can be found on page 10. And FEC Malls creation of Electoral Offences Commission. That will be found in greater detail on page 12. The story that Femi read earlier with regard to protesting youths in Anambra, you have the photographs there on the front page of the Punch newspaper with the headline, 2 killed as protesting youths sack police station, page 4. Now, $10.1 billion demand makes local listing challenging, says MTN. Police arrest Evans's lawyer in court. That's Evans, the alleged kidnapper, a kingpin of kidnappers, by the way, and that can be found on page 38. Fayoshe writes EFCC, says a report for probe on October 16th, by which time his immunity would have lapsed. Details on page 40. And rescued suicidal youth disappears with Good Samaritan's goods and money, pages 4 and 5. PDP warns INEC against plot to shift 2019 polls. INEC has already issued a agenda to that and saying that there are no plans to shift the 2019 elections.
Well, sorry, talking about People's Democratic Party, there are indications there too that they have set up a 12-member committee to discuss with the 12 presidential aspirants that is evolving on that platform. The Board of Trustee Chairman Wali Jibrin says that the present number is unwieldy and there is need and fears that this could lead to disagreement if it is not sorted out. However, the BOT members have recommended to the National Working Committee of the party to set up a committee not to compel any aspirant to withdraw. Secondly, they are also not to persuade them to put their interest, the interest of the party above their personal interest, and then also they should discuss with aspirants to come up with one as a consensus candidate. That is an uphill task that they will have to attain because already everybody is saying, let's go all the way to the primaries, let everybody test their popularity. And the fears expressed is that this could lead to implosion or bad blood after the convention. So they are trying to manage the crisis before it brews up.
Why would going to primaries bring about a crisis? I think the votes are supposed to determine it. And the delegates would actually want the primaries to be held, actually.
Well, the contention here is this. If you want direct primaries, then you don't talk about delegates. It means that...
PDP are not talking about direct primaries.
So everybody will vote. If you're talking about delegates, then it means it select people who will vote. But everybody wants to test their popularity at the polls. But there have been insinuations about the old members and the new members. So much so that even one of the presidential aspirants was saying that you cannot join this, our religious group, at evening and seek to lead us in prayers, in the evening prayers. That is not possible. So those are the fears that the elders of the party, the Board of Trustees, are expressing concerns about.
Okay, thank you. Now we still go to leadership, and the security situation is the concern of leadership on the front page. Security operatives, iPod face-off imminent as group dares army police. insists on sit-at-home order. Those are the riders. We are not part of it, Masob says. And then Kano, parents' whereabouts unknown 1 year after. That is coming from leadership. The political story on the front page of leadership comes in form of a pictorial, and that is the submission of the forms by the president, a group photograph displaying the form. The security situation, according to the leadership, is causing a stalemate. We wouldn't know what the IPOB are up to, but looks like Masob are saying they are not part of this in this story.
Actually, a sit at home should not cause confusion. But where you go out to sack a police station, you are disturbing public peace. Therefore, the security agency must stop that. If everybody volunteers not to sit at home, not to go out, there's no law that says that that is a violation anywhere. If that is done peacefully, fine. But to say you want to sit at home and compel other people who may not want to sit at home to move about, then you'll be cutting and disturbing other people's right to freedom of movement. So if this thing is managed properly, you are free to protest and sit at home, provided you don't disturb the public peace. Where you disrupt public peace, that is when you have a crisis with the security agency. Security agencies will also respect their right to refuse to sit at home.
All right, Bayo, thanks a lot. There was a story I read from the Punch newspaper, one of the two earpieces beside the nameplate of the Punch. It says EFCC hands over seized houses to VON, that's the Voice of Nigeria, PITAD, that's the Pension Transitional Office, and others, including, of course, VITS. That story is in greater detail on page 10. Bayo, you'll recall we had discussed this some time ago, I believe probably 2016 or 2017, when questions were being asked as to what the government was doing with the properties recovered from persons who were either facing trial or who had voluntarily relinquished those assets on account of the fact that they had probably made a plea bargain, or they couldn't satisfactorily explain the sources of funds for that. But the concern again is still one, namely, what is the land use implication of such properties? Now, these entities to which they have been given, if the location where the property is residential, why would you now have, an office or have offices in those locations? Before you know it, you have traffic menace, you have traffic nuisance, and so on and so forth. I think that this is one thing that has to be looked into much more closely, so that properties in residential areas, are not allocated to government establishments that would then, begin to cause, some distortion, as it were, with regard to the land use. Yes, land use of that particular location. Actually, that report is a part of the fallout of the report the EFCC gave. It was giving indication that the whistleblowing policy of the federal government, instituted in December 2015, had led to the EFCC to recover about 527,436,500,000 naira. Another recovery was $53 million and another 122,000 pounds sterling, as well as 547 euro. However, the EFCC did not give indication about how much it had paid to whistleblowers during that time. You may recall that the Minister of Finance also sometime last year gave indication that government had recovered about $7.8 billion, $278 million, as well as 27,800 pounds. The Minister of Finance then also gave an indication of how much had been paid to whistleblowers for revealing those funds that were questionably kept. All right, Bayo, then there's also the other story. I'm sure, Femi, you also read that, I believe, from one of the papers. The federal government seeking to, the Federal Executive Council now, seeking to create an election offenses commission. Well, of course, I think it was the Daily Sun that was referring to it as a court, yes. But probably the commission would have extensive judicial powers. It's one matter that has been lingering for a while. With regard, long overdue, yes, actually. Long overdue. I'm sure you would like to make a comment on that as well. There are about 3 bills that were proposed at the Federal Executive Council to tackle those political challenges. One of them is certainly to establish the Electoral Offences Commission that will take charge of
the concerns about electoral offenses. It is becoming prevalent, particularly the last election in Ekiti. People were voting and apparently showing their ballot papers to ensure that they were justifying the monies they were paid at the polling stations to vote. So, and INEC too has said that it's going to make scapegoats of persons during the Austrian election. On the whole, they're trying to put in place an executive bill, maybe through the National Assembly, to ensure that laws are put in place to check these electoral malpractices.
Election offenses have always been part of our elections, and how to prosecute these people successfully has always been the problem. INEC was saddled with that responsibility. INEC has too much on its hands to do that. So in creating this Election Offenses Commission, I'm sure they are also going to look at the prosecuting agency. It wouldn't be INEC, because INEC cannot continue to arrest police, possibly, and just the prosecuting agency is a very, very important thing. Just as we have prosecuting agencies, EFCC, ICPC for financial crimes. So electoral crimes, we should have a specific prosecuting agency that would look at it.
It's been a major concern, after each election cycle, as to what happens to persons who blatantly violate electoral laws and thereby, of course, commit electoral offenses. You ask yourself, how many successful prosecutions have we seen, across the country? Instances of thuggery, ballot box snatching, and of course the latest that came out from Ekiti, that is the so-called see and buy, voter inducement, and all kinds of things. INEC, of course, has its own major challenges. INEC cannot arrest offenders, for those things. That's the business of the security agencies. But if an electoral offenses commission comes on board eventually, then it will take away that additional burden from INEC and allow INEC now to concentrate much more fully on being an election management body, and then offenses arising therefrom will then go to another commission. There have been proposals for this in particular. But something else out of the Federal Executive Council, Bayo, that you talked about earlier, that there were 3 bills that were proposed at the Federal Executive Council. There is also a bill for an amendment to the Electoral Act. Well, of course, the details are not specified in the report. So one would then be wondering, because just a little over a week or so ago, the Senior Special Assistant to the President of National Assembly Matters did say that the President withheld his assent to the electoral bill as passed by the National Assembly, amendment bill as passed by the National Assembly, on account of errors, clerical errors, as well as drafting complications based on what they had seen. So what then will be the role of the amendment, this bill now being proposed again? Would that supplant the communication by the President to the National Assembly with regard to the reasons why he withheld his assent? I don't know.
With that proposal, the return of the Electoral Act for clerical errors, and this proposal, they all will now have to dovetail back to the National Assembly. So it becomes the challenge for the National Assembly to sort that out before the 2019 elections.
Big task.
Yes, it is a big task.
So now we go to the editorial, and it's something that has also been reviewed on Good Morning Nigeria. It's cheering that newspapers are taking stock of the president's visit to China. And the Daily Sun, in its editorial, says it is cheering news that Nigeria signed 13 deals worth $10 billion with China at the recent Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit held in Beijing, China. Now, the editorial takes stock of most of these deals as they will benefit Nigeria, but ends up with a warning at the end of the editorial. And I read the warning. A lot of people have also hinted on this area. The government should also resist the temptation to make Nigeria a dumping ground for all manner of Chinese products. The government's main focus should be on how to industrialize the country. We should aim at manufacturing some of the goods we need. The excessive reliance on imported goods is stifling the economy and slowing our pace of industrialization. So that is a hint for Nigeria as we pursue deals with concerned nations with Nigeria. The benefits are there. The benefits are already being stated by all these editorials, and but then there's also a warning attached to it.
Yes, the warning is not out of place. It's in the sense that while you are seeking interest, every nation tries to protect its own interest in any relationship. Therefore, China certainly is not a modern-day Father Christmas. They are here to invest, however, to help us develop, but therefore they also are there to further their own national interest and economic interest. The concerns being expressed, therefore, are not far-fetched. However, some of the fears that have been expressed are about the volume of the debt. And the president of the African Development Bank, Akiwumi Adesina, says that Africa debt crisis is only about 37% as at 2017, and therefore it is within the income of countries. And so there is no cause for alarm. However, there have been some alarm expressed in the East Africa, particularly in Kenya, because of the involvement of China in the economy of Kenya. There are fears now that Mombasa Port, for instance, and other facilities has already been ceded to China, taken away from the government of Kenya and several other East African countries where China has interest. These are some of the alarms that has been raised. But in the context of Nigeria, most of the investment involve the Exim Bank and there is counterpart funding. And those fears that are being expressed in East Africa are not very likely to happen here. The volume of the debt is what many are speaking about. But even the most developed nations, the United States, has one of the largest debt profile to GDP in the world. Therefore, that danger is perhaps a good warning, but it is not something to be so worried about for now.
All right, Bayatebe, thank you very much. Just, of course, before we go, there's a story there on the front page of The Guardian. It's inside the Punch as well, just below the nameplate of the Guardian. And that will lead us to asking the question whether Imo State, as of today, still has a full complement of a government. Yesterday, the governor took this drastic step of sacking a number of his aides. You remember that his deputy was impeached, and that matter is in court, by the way, so he has no substantive deputy governor. Chief of Staff fired, Deputy Chief of Staff fired, Secretary of Government fired, commissioners fired, special assistants, special advisors fired.
Well, there are other insinuations to it. However, there are also indications about that 10 or 11 of them have political interests, and therefore they have to leave their position to contest in the election coming in 2019. So it is not all...
Well, the legal requirement is not for you to be fired when you are contesting the primaries. This is already inside us, including, of course, his son-in-law, who has been proposed for that. Thanks a lot for being around with us today. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with something that's a subject matter that affects your pocket if you deal with banks, bank charges, and what your rights are as a customer.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
What makes a Nigerian mom powerful?
I trust the power of Dettol's One Capful for bathing. The power of Dettol's One Capful protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Be 100% sure.
For years, the NTA has been promoting science, technology, arts and crafts under the tagged name National Children's Expo. We are set with another edition as we gather children around Nigeria, junior category ages 6 to 12 and senior category ages 13 to 18. The theme for Expo 2018, achieving self-sufficiency in agriculture, meeting the challenges of security and exposition of alternative energy as pathways to national development. Date, October 21st to 25th, 2018. Venue, NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. We are set to celebrate the best of innovation across the country. For more information, please call the following numbers. NTA ETV, promoting learning.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three put
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome.
You take that one. You take that one.
You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobu to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Now to set the tone for our discussion on bank charges and Nigerian customer, we have this background report by Aisha Uba Ali.
Most Nigerians are involved in one banking service or the other. Bank operators have always created ways of billing customers to cover the cost of services rendered. Some of the charges that customers are made to pay for include checking account fee, minimum balance, overdraft, return deposit, hard copy statement, foreign transaction, loss of card, inactivity, account closing, account maintenance, and ATM fees, among others. While many bank customers do not dispute the fact they are supposed to pay for services they get from banks, their grouse is with the fact that some of their charges are repetitive, arbitrary, unexplained, and excessive. Many claim that the banks exploit their ignorance and inability to challenge such charges by continuously making deductions from their account against approved guidelines. In July this year, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, said it recovered over 65 billion naira as illegal charges wrongfully deducted from customers' deposits and other transactions within the banking system. The Apex Bank said that the money was recovered from commercial banks and had since been refunded to the affected customers. While this can be said to be the right step in the right direction, the major concern is how these alleged excessive charges affect the willingness of Nigerians to embrace banking and key into the cashless policy of the government. How can the issue of alleged excessive bank charges be resolved? What are the avenues for redressing any grievance by the customer? To what extent can consumer education help in this process? These are some issues that experts will be addressing shortly on Good Morning Nigeria.
All All right, thank you very much, Aisha Obali, for that backgrounder. We have guests with us here in the studios and as well as at our Lagos Network Center. First, at this time, here with us in the Abuja studios, we would like to welcome once again Obinaya Uruakba. He's a former banker and now he's an entrepreneur expert, of course, plus his role as a public affairs analyst. Obinaya Uruakba, thanks for being with us on the program.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, and from our Lagos Network studios, we'll also be joined by another former banker and a financial analyst, Shuaibu Idris. Shuaibu Idris, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good morning, Kingsley, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right, we were expecting another guest with us here in the Abuja studios. As soon as we are able to introduce him, of course, we'll get him on air and then, of course, have his own views on this very sensitive topic with regard to the frequent complaints that bank customers come up with these days with regard to a wide array of charges that keep depleting their savings or their deposits in the various banks. Let's begin this conversation from our Lagos Network studios. Shuaibu Idris, give us a sense. What is the concept of bank charges all about in the first instance?
Basically, Kingsley, banks are companies that are established and they have shareholders, people who invest in the companies with a view to making profit. By that, basically is when a company is set up and a company renders some services, over the period, the company do try to recover all the cost and associated expenses in rendering services. Some of these costs are human capital, that is salaries and allowances paid to staff, having offices, having cars, technology, and all that gamut of infrastructure that are required to render the services. In doing so, the banks do try to recover this cost and make certain level of profit so that they can return income to the major stakeholders, that is government in form of taxes, social responsibility that the banks do render, as well as the shareholders and the staff of the bank, like I did say, that get paid. Basically, that is the purpose for which bank charges are collected from customers.
How do banks arrive at the quantum of the charges and what to charge for?
Femi, there are basically two ways bank charges, are arrived at. Number one, there's what we call the banker's tariff, which is a kind of a direction by the industry regulator, that is, in this case, the Central Bank of Nigeria, which direct the banks as to this is the maximum charges you should charge customers. If more often than not, charges are, like I did say, maximum rate. So the banks can and indeed are allowed to charge lower fees. There are other fees that banks charge that are not usually, governed or, guided by the central bank regulations. Basically, the banks are allowed to charge on as they please, in the sense that, one bank may have lower charges than the other for obvious reason because of law of large numbers. For example, if a first banker or a first bank decide to charge 1 naira for a fee because of their size, say another smaller bank may not be able to charge 1 naira, may charge 3 naira or even 5 naira or higher because of, the issue of size and economy of scale, as we say it in economics.
All right, Shuaibu Idris, thanks a lot. We'll get back to you. Let's also get the views of Obinaya Uruakba right here with us in the Abuja studios. Give us your sense of what do you understand by the concept of bank charges? Why do banks have to charge their customers?
Okay, why do banks have to charge their customers? I like the use of the word customers. Banks are set up to make profits. They're in business. And like you said, customers. So they go out seeking customers. And there's costs of acquiring customers. There's cost of keeping the light on. There's also cost of building infrastructure. Now, he has covered all of that. But the angle I would like to look at is what leads to the level of the degree of charges that they charge. Now, if you look at the cost of doing business in Nigeria, which is why the Vice President's office has come up with the ease of doing business, the executive order, I believe it's Executive Order 3. Now, you understand that some of them put up telecommunication masts. You discussed that about 2 days ago, and they get destroyed. A couple of things happen to them. Then you have different security challenges. You have the issue with power and so on. All of those things come down. The chicken comes to roost at some point, where when you calculate the cost of doing business, acquiring a customer, make phone calls, you drop calls and all of those things, it comes down to somebody bearing it, and you and I end up bearing it. Where I have a challenge is he talked about banker's tariff. Banker's tariff is released by the central bank. My challenge is I understand from being a personal development trainer that what never gets measured never gets done. The Central Bank of Nigeria has a banking supervision department. We need to understand to what extent the CBN monitors the strict compliance to this banker's tariff. The other thing I also want to point out is that if you look at practices in places like UK and the United States of America, at some point in the 70s and 80s, the issues of charges had to be withdrawn because competition made them withdraw it. Now, charges were now based on overdrafts. But here, charges are almost on all manners of things. Even things you didn't ask for are charged. SMS you did not ask for, email and all of that. And it comes down to the issue of capacity of the average Nigerian. You and I have had to discuss this when we have discussed entrepreneurship and all of that. How many Nigerians are able to read bank statements? I know we're going to come to that point in this discussion. How many Nigerians are able to understand that the very use of their phones to be able to do email transactions, initiate transactions, could actually reduce costs for them? I'll give you one example. When you go doing transaction across the counter, they could charge you as much as 52 naira. But when you initiate it from your phone, it could be 8 naira. Look at the difference. So we have situations where if you understand the use of technology and you understand banking actually, and you have financial literacy, we've had to discuss that also, you would be able to pay salaries from your own desk. You'll be able to monitor things, do more emails, do electronic. The central bank came up and talked about the cashless economy. You know how long it took us to implement in Lagos, come to Abuja, go to the 6 geopolitical zones. Where are we with that? If Nigerians understand that you have the, as I speak, CBN has gone to the point of setting up a Consumer Protection Council inside the bank, a department actually, inside the bank. Now, that Consumer Protection Council, department, pardon me, in compliance with the Bankers Committee, in consonance with the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation, the Consumer Protection Council, has even gone ahead to recover charges from these banks. What I have noticed is that these banks are left to initiate these charges because, like he said, there's a latitude to operate. A first bank that is big, that has a large customer base, may look at the unit costs per thousand and charge a particular fee. A smaller bank may not need to charge that much, but we also need to monitor it. But let me also tell you what I discovered in my research. My research shows that the central bank is supposed to receive an application before any bank applies any charge on you. We need to verify if that is going on. The jury is still out. We're not holding it against anyone, but the fact remains that it is real, sir. Overcharges are real. And what I've discovered is up until you, Kingsley, initiates a complaint, some of these charges don't get reversed. To be fair to the banks, sometimes you put in your ATM card and you don't get money out of the machine. Sometimes it reverses itself. But if you also trace, sometimes there are no reversals. And the pain I have is that banking is built on trust and underword integrity. If we continue like this, Nigerians will start putting money in the ceilings and in the soccer ways and so on. As I speak to you, there are some persons, I challenge you to go to Okare market and go to Ariaria market. Some of our brothers are putting their money in their stores, which is why whenever a market burns, what do they cry about? They don't even cry about the stocks they have. They cry about the money they left there. They lost. Robbers are robbing everywhere. Why do robbers still go around? Because we are all carrying cash around. I bought fuel yesterday, not very far from you. And I asked them, do you have a POS? They said, I gave them my card. And they swiped the money. So if you catch me on the road, you probably may not get cash. So it comes down to, we need to look at it holistically. Infrastructure. Have we put the right infrastructure? Have we put in place a few things? Have we monitored the telecommunications guys? Because the charges they also charge them, the cost of doing business in Nigeria is high. I've also done stuff in insurance. I can tell you that the premium you pay for insurance will shock you. In UK, it's less. In Asia, it's less. Nigeria has one of the highest premium you have on doing business.
Now, are we saying that there's hardly a regulatory body that takes charge of bank charges? Since now we seem to have justified why it would differ from one bank to the other. Are there no regulations that can determine what banks can do and what they cannot do in terms of charges?
No, you said it in your report, by the female voice I heard. Yeah. The Central Bank of Nigeria is seized with the responsibility to supervise banking activities in Nigeria. Now, the Central Bank has departments, over 27 departments. One of them is banking supervision. One of them now is Consumer Protection Department. It is their duty. The question I've always asked each time we've had interaction on this platform is, does the Central Bank have enough manpower to supervise over 24 commercial banks? And you also have some other not necessarily deposit money banks that also do financial transactions, and they charge you and I. Microfinance banks, at the last count we checked, we are close to 890 of them, and though some of them have gone under. But it still comes down to monitoring. Now, you have mobile money transactions going on. Who is supervising some of them who charge about 5% flat per month, meaning 60% interest rate on you and I? Now, are you wondering why the MSME sector, the micro, small, and medium enterprise sector, is struggling? In the course of this working to come on this show, I made my investigations and I spoke to people. I interacted with up until the time I walked in. And many of them complain about certain things. Part of why I think the banks are charging us so much is because they want to declare profits and make the shareholders happy. Yeah. But my question is always this: can't we do reverse thinking? To say, okay, why don't you come and sit down with us? And I've seen that happen with a few microfinance banks. Sit down with the people on the streets. The vice president last Thursday had to go into the market for the traders' money. The last time I checked, 2 days ago on your report, NTA, he was in Calabar doing the same thing. Now, can't we come to a point where we copy from someone that highly exalted to sit down? The banks need to sit down with me, sit down with you, and find out what they need to do to grow me as an entrepreneur. Grow me as an MSME, like Great Expectations, peeping Great Expectations. Take me by hand and bring me up and set me up. You can charge me as much charges as you want to charge because you helped me, you have built me. But what I see here is that they go to people like Kingsley, maybe in the class of Dangotes, and you know what I'm talking about. I'm
not a businessman.
They give them all the money they need. They give them all the big money they need. But for those of us who are small operators in the MSME sector, you understand what I'm talking about. Why don't you work together, sit down, and grow the business? How many banks are doing credits? In
fact, that's Obinai. Let's pause you in the meantime. I return again to Shuaibu Idris in our Lagos network studio. Shuaibu Idris, you listen to the broad array of issues articulated by Obinaya right here with us in the Abuja studios. Now, let's crunch some of the charges that we are seeing in the meantime. Before we give you the opportunity to respond to aspects relating to the rationale for some of these charges, or what banks ordinarily should be doing, or why they are doing what they are doing. Some persons are already saying, look, the intervention of technology, which ordinarily should have been a boon to banking business and banking transactions for bankers and their customers, it now become, as it were, a source of some of those frequent charges. Let's take a look at it. I mean, some of the ones I get, and I'm sure you do as well. It's say get an ATM. If you are applying for an ATM card, if you're applying for a card, you have to pay an application fee. I think it's about 1,000 naira or so. Every month you get a card. You get charged a card maintenance fee. What are you maintaining? The card is in. I have the card. What are you maintaining? I mean, I carry the card on me. So maybe they maintain yours. I don't know how yours is maintained. You know. So you have that, and then they say SMS, monthly SMS. Maybe they will just send you something, your bank balance, which you have to delete in case you meet some of these bad guys on the road, so that they won't have access to whatever you have. SMS charges, bank monthly maintenance charge, and so on and so forth. How do they arrive at this? Is technology now becoming a disincentive, you know, to the banking customer? Some persons might say, oh, well, the amount is very little, but if you aggregate it, you will see what the quantum is like. What are your thoughts?
Thank you very much for those loaded questions. Number one, I give glory to God that I'm no longer on the board of any bank because I used to be a bank director, so I'm not depending any bank in any way. But first thing first, number one, I think most of these charges are high and they are outrageous. I do align my thoughts to my colleague that the central bank needs to do much more than what it is doing in terms of defending the interests of customers and making sure that the banks are not excessively charging customers. No two way about it that technology should and must be a basis for which charges, bank charges should come down. But instead, what we are witnessing in Nigeria is technology is giving these banks even the opportunity to even charge more. Just like the example my colleague, the discussant, did mention, just one example. My bank, I won't mention name, whenever I do any transfer, even if it is 5,000 naira or 10,000 naira using my cell phone, I get a debit charge of 65 naira in the name of recovery charge. And most of these banks refuse to even have ATMs all over places, so you are compelled to use automated teller machines in other locations. And if you withdraw 10,000 naira, and someone withdraws 20,000 naira from the same teller machine, you get charged the same flat rate of 65 naira. These are outrageous charges. But we must also realize that the central bank has not been helping matters. Just like quite a number of sectors of the Nigerian economy where we have policy somersault, central bank did roll out some policies during the Lamido Sanusi's days, and during Emeple's days, some of these policies were reversed, and the cashlight policies that was rolled out was reversed. And the same thing did happen under Professor Charles Soludo. He did roll out some policies. When Lamido Sanusi came, he reversed them. So when you have policy somersault and the banks are not supervised as much as they should, what do you end up with? The banks are just robbing Peter to pay Paul. People that are poor and less endowed like me and you who are salary earners, we end up paying excessive bank charges, and the powerful and the mighty go free without even paying any dime as to the banking charges that they should pay. And I think the central bank needs to do much more. But much more than that, customers need to shine their eyes. You did talk about the ATM card. I can tell you I have 1 or 2 ATM cards, and to my surprise, only one bank charges me monthly card maintenance fee. The other 2 or 3 bank cards that I do have don't have, I don't see any debit in form of account maintenance or ATM maintenance fee. So you could see the differentiation. But my suggestion, and indeed if we are to borrow from other climate, like say the United Kingdom or United States or the entire European continent, is competition. Competition will be the deciding factor as to why and how bank charges should come down. For example, if I decide to set up a bank today and I said, guys, anybody who decides to bank with me, I'm not going to charge him or her XYZ charges. Tendencies are I will pull customers to my side, I will pull resources, and you know banking is an axiom of law of large number. The larger the customers you have, the more deposit you have, the more money you get from customers, and the higher amount of money you hold and you can float without paying, without having to pay any interest to customers. There are a number of those charges that certainly the banks can do away with and should do away with if customers demand by way of right. If we just have to wait until someone writes, say, to the Central Bank Consumer Protection Department, then many customers never get any justice. Someone in Jibia, someone in Maiduguri, someone in, say, Awomama in Imo State, how and where will he or she have access to even the Central Bank branch in their respective state? These are things that we certainly need to look at critically.
You said customers should, using your word, shine their eyes. How can they do that when they don't get to know what they are going into until they are into it already? Except possibly we have public interest litigations, collective litigations. How can customers determine whether to go into, except they begin to go and do a survey of charges as per bank, and you know that that is not available to the public until you go into being a customer?
We lost you there. Can you please repeat the question, because the voice...
Use your word. You said bank customers should shine their eyes. You can't do that from outside. You already become a customer before you know what you are into. How can a customer refuse to be, cheated, for instance, in this area until he goes into it? He must be a customer before he knows what is being charged.
There is a general axiom in business that is said, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. The fact that you are a customer of Bank XYZ and the bank charges you outrageous fee, you have one or two options. One option is you approach the bank directly and demand for a reversal, or you go to the central bank to lodge a formal complaint through the bankers committee or the consumer protection department. Because we have multiplicity of banks, the fact that a bank charges you, say, like Kinsley did say, they are charging you ATM maintenance fee on a monthly basis, you could easily move and switch to another bank. So obviously, you need to know more, and you need to ask questions. Customers and Nigerians must ask questions, must demand for information on the point of entering into an agreement. Because remember, when you choose to open a bank account, whether we like it or not, is a covenant, it's a partnership, it's a relationship. There is an agreement between the customer and the bank. And you don't just walk into a bank and an account is open for you. There is a form that is given to you, and in some of those forms, some of those minute details are embedded there. Like I did say, I'm in no way defending any of the banks, but we also need to do our bit without necessarily loading that all the banks are either crooks or rogues or thieves. Yes, they are taking so much money from us. Yes, the services are nowhere near the value for money that they are taking from us. Yes, we are not getting as much reduction in fees as we should given technology, but we also need to do our bit by demanding by way of right. As at today, I'm consulting for an organization which is demanding for a refund of interest during lead time of LC. These are monies that are due to be refunded to customers. Most of these banks don't refund such kind of monies unless if you demand. Excessive bank charges like COT, Commission of Turnover, that was abolished and recently reintroduced with different names as account maintenance fee. These are, charges that are no longer applicable in most climates, and there is no reason whatsoever why the Central Bank of Nigeria should allow banks to charge such monies. Imagine, simple technology that we have on sending SMS, the short messaging system. If you do short messaging system bulk, you don't pay more than 1 naira 50 kobo, maximum 2 naira. The banks still charge customers 4 naira for every SMS. Why should the banks be making money on SMS, charges, when they are not a telecommunication company? These are areas, like I did say, my colleague alluded to the fact that the central bank needs to do more of the banking supervision so that customers cheating shouldn't continue. We need to take a holistic look at this charges issue, because certainly bank charges are inhibiting our success with financial inclusion. If you ask me today, notwithstanding the fact that my first working place was bank and I rose to the position of bank director, if I have an opportunity not to bank with a Nigerian bank, I wouldn't bank because of the charges. It is that bad even for my situation.
it's coming from an enlightened person like Shaibu, then we can imagine what the ordinary market woman is saying about these things. Now, back to Abuja here with you, Obinaya. There's no doubt that there looks like impunity by banks. How can this be checked?
It's as simple as the fact that the latest guideline, it's called the guide, released by the Central Bank of Nigeria was 2017 May. But what I've discovered also is that the categories of charges that are approved is the guideline on charges by the Central Bank herself. You asked me earlier on about who regulates. There's actually a document. The latest one is May 2017. But what I've discovered is that it's not exhaustive. I'm also going to be fair enough to the Central Bank to say that Central Bank may not want to over-regulate because we have a market economy where you are free to transact business based on what you think your business plan says. However, we shouldn't be the ones bearing the brunt of whatever is wrong with our environment. Yes, it's a developing economy. We're still growing, which is why I said earlier on, we need to come together. You talked about the market woman. The Central Bank of Nigeria is doing some work with enlightening the rest of the world. Shuaibu mentioned the fact that people need to understand exactly what they are being charged. Now, who is going to read the document, which is the same challenge you have with the insurance industry? How many of us sit down to have time to read all of those small prints and all of the number of pages that you need to read? How many of us go to fill form? Sometimes the marketer just tells you to sign, and then you complete and you submit. You just want an account open for you. Sometimes you're rushing to do a contract and you just want an account number. Who has the patience to go through all of that? So I think we need to invest in enlightenment. I had said before on this platform that part of the challenge I have with colonization is the fact that the white man, and I say this with no apology, was supposed to teach us three intelligences, three levels of intelligence. Academic knowledge, which is why if I speak English, you understand me. Second one, administrative knowledge, which is why you're a manager in your office. The third one is financial intelligence. Now, it's coming to bear right now. The fact that many of us are not able to read our account statement. Even if you set up a business today, part of the challenge you're likely to face is that your accountant may be ripping you off because you don't know how to read your credit balances and all of that. So we need to begin to teach our people. So for those of you who are in the media world, maybe the central bank may need to have a handshake with you, whether on radio, on TV, the newsprint, to begin to educate people. We can utilize the core members in every local government area in Nigeria to begin to explain to people what this means. He mentioned the issue of people far-flung in different parts of the country, our mama and so on. Who is talking to them? Now, what I've discovered is that you may not mind when it is 15 naira charged to you as an individual. But when you look at 198 million Nigerians and the fact that some banks have as many as 14 million customers, and you do a calculation of 15 naira for each SMS that you are charged for, then you understand why many banks declare huge profits at the end of the year for an economy that hardly is making profit, even where the government is not able to appropriate 100% of the budget that she has even outlined. Banks are declaring billions and are winning Euro Money Magazine Award and award in UK and so on. Some bank MDs own private jets. And I'm going to be very blunt to say that in an economy like this, there's a disconnect. There's a very wide gulf between the banks. And then I think the banking system in Nigeria needs to be looked at. The image banks want to create does not apply here. If you look at the Grameen Bank, set up by Mohammed Yunus, a man who came up with the idea of the microcredit in 1974, the Wall Street Journal insulted him and told him that the poor do not do credit. But today he has succeeded. We need to go and read the book, Banker to the Poor. Find out how he succeeded. What he did was he was realistic with himself. The same traditional system where, Kingsley, your mother has a cow or has a goat that has delivered like 7. And she gives a female one to the next neighbor. When the other female goat delivers, she goes to take back one. She has paid back the loan of the goat. That's what Grameen Bank did in Bangladesh. But what do? You want to set up a microfinance bank, and you go to Otako or you go to Broad Street to go and build a glass house. All of that costs. Trying to wear suits, Giorgio Armani suits and all of that, instead of wearing Abba, comes down to you at night. So they find a way to recover their costs.
All right. Benaya and Shuaibu, gentlemen, we're still on this conversation. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll also take the views of our viewers who have sent in their tweets using our Twitter handle at NTAJMN, plus another guest who will join the conversation.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogerola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with
You're welcome. We have been joined now by a former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Obadiah Melafia. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we come to you with some of the questions, let's take our tweets. And there are floods of tweets coming in. I start with Ibrahim Tudu, who says Nigerians are suffering from banks' frequent arbitrary and excessive charges. The problem is that CBN is powerless over all these. Banks are very hard on their customers. They come with wide array of charges but refuse to attend to even a small loan request from the customers.
Now, Olariwaju Rashid has this tweet. Good morning. It's so sad that our banks are extorting us. Imagine my bank deducting 700 naira from 6,000 naira I was having in my account. And this was done and no alert to that effect. This is nothing but stealing by trick.
Let's go back to another tweet from Ibrahim Tudu. He says the regulatory agency, the CBN, has allowed these banks to operate with impunity. Remember, some of these banks are branches from other countries. They can't do that in other countries.
Now, Mike Anyako has this tweet. Now, arbitrary bank charges are the order of the day in almost all banks in Nigeria. They capitalize on the fact that many customers are not sophisticated and do not know their rights. Although many of these charges are negligible, but when you sum the total of total customer base, then you will know the consequence.
Sani Michael Amakoji says, nobody is into business to lose. However, the degree banks charge in Nigeria are ambiguous and exploitative in nature. They charge for SMS, ATM, transfers, bank statements, and other undisclosed charges. They need to be investigated and monitored to curtail this organized fraud.
Abdullahi Onishabi has this next tweet. Central banks should dedicate a line and special email for customers of commercial banks to complain over excessive charges.
And Mr. Umar, I have been banking with Nigerians' conventional banks for over 15 years. What I learned over this period is that the charges are actually insignificant, but this is a gap of communication. But there is a gap in communication between the bank and customers as to when what customers are charged.
Engineer Idara Udo has this tweet. Now, I had 1,300 naira in a bank, but before I knew it, charges reduced it to 650 naira in less than 4 months. I am just observing when they will finish the 650 naira left on charges, if they will call me to send them more money.
Great tweet
yeah,
there.
That's a great one. So that when the balance is now zero, I'm sure the marketers will hit the road again. Now, you're laughing, but let's bring in Dr. Obadiah Melafia, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Of course, a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria with two other guests, of course, Shuaibu Idris, former banker, as well as Obadiah here, talked about a range of rationale for bank charges, who regulates it, and what ordinarily should happen. But the complaints are plentiful with regard to the excessive nature of these charges. Little amounts, little drops of water, the saying goes, would make a mighty ocean. Exactly. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, let's get one principle clear. Banks are not charities. They're there to make money for their shareholders. That is a well-established principle. But at the same time, in making that money, they must avoid things that look straightforward fraud, extortion, or in fact, downright criminality. Unfortunately, there's a lot of that going on. People forget that banking started mainly in Venice, the ancient trading state of Venice. And that's the word bank comes from the Italian word banco. It's just a desk where people with interest in money used to sit there because traders used to travel all over. They could be waylaid by armed robbers, by bandits, by pirates on the high seas. So they preferred not to carry a lot of cash. So they'll go to these guys who sit on an open desk in the marketplace, and they will give them letters of credit and collect whatever they have and keep it for them. It was a very open and transparent process. That is why they call it banco. And from banco, we have the word banking. This is really the origin. So it requires transparency. When some of us were growing up, there were just a few people you could trust with your life. One of them was your banker. The other one was your priest, of course, your medical doctor, your accountant, and in fact, your lawyer. Today, almost none of those can be trusted, unfortunately. I will make an exception for the priest.
Except for your lawyers.
Exactly. I will make an exception for the priest. But even then, there are some even issues. So it's a generalized collapse of our moral and ethical framework. So that is a major problem. For me, the punishment is not enough. Look, I've known people in business that have been bankrupted by their banks. In fact, a businessman committed suicide because the charges just piled up until the guy committed suicide. He could not cope. Some I know of a concrete case, they lacked his mansion, so they tripled, he took a mortgage, they tripled it within a year because they wanted to buy it off him. They sent valuers indirectly, and one of the directors really wanted to buy, he coveted that property. So they tripled it knowing that he will not be able to pay. And they put massive pressure on him to sell to them. In the end, that is what he did. And they bought it at a giveaway. So a lot, and they do that even with people's businesses. They like your business so much because they keep their accounts, they know the cash flow. They like it, they'll triple your charges knowing you might not be able to pay, and they'll come and pressure you and take over. A lot of that is going on. Unfortunately, I don't think the regulator is exerting enough punishment. One of the best ways to solve this problem is through naming and shaming. The way they publish on a regular basis charges on interest rates, they need to do that with all cases involving extortionate overcharges by banks. Publish them on a monthly or regular basis to name and shame those that are really fleecing ordinary people. And of course, people will make up their mind whether they want to continue with a bank that clearly is cheating customers or they would prefer to go to those ones that have integrity. CBN through the Consumer Protection Service, should begin to publish the names and the banks that are involved in these serious infractions. To me, that is the only solution.
What some people will tell you is that there are hardly exceptions. So when they say there is a collective impunity, there's nowhere for the customer to run to.
Then you increase the punishment. You increase the level of punishment. They feel it. It bites them when they have to pay. The kind of punishment where sanctions were given MTN should be extended to some of the banks. Increase the scale and the level of punishment. At some point, they will have to balk.
All right, Dr. Melafia, thank you very much. Let's return to Shuaibu Idris. Mr. Shuaibu Idris, of course, you listen to Bidai Melafia give us his own perspective. One other point that, of course, we're going to get to, he's already touched on that. So let's just drill into that now. Namely, of course, if you are not a debtor, you might not experience this. For those, who approach banks for credit, it's almost virtually that in some cases, they are, if they are not careful, digging their own financial graves. I give you one typical example. Somebody says, for instance, I'm going to the bank to go and borrow 1 million naira. By the time you approach the bank, of course, the bank will expect you to have your own collateral. They will also expect you to have some minimum deposit. Plus, assuming they are giving you 1 million naira, if they are satisfied with the security you have provided, you will not get 1 million. What you will get will be less so-called administrative charges. Who determines those administrative charges? Plus, the compounding of the interest, as Dr. Melafia has just indicated, sometimes, if you are close to some bankers, they will warn you against certain things. When they begin to convert your property or convert your assets, they will find a way of squeezing you out of all of that. These are unethical practices, and these are charges at the higher ends of financial transactions. Let's hear your comment.
Thank you very much, Kinsley. Good morning, Dr. Melafia. I'm welcome. Number one, before I answer the question, I would like to fundamentally differ with Dr. Melafia as to the central bank naming and shaming. I think we should go beyond that. The central bank's guideline on charges that was released, the latest one was released May 2017, should be revised. Early this year, there was a report that shows 49 billion naira was collected by just about 4 banks from these charges. What has happened? What has been done? Nearly nothing. And the best way is like he did say, banking started from Venice in Italy. So we are learning, and we must continue to learn from continental Europe. If there is no charge on card in continental Europe, if there is no charge on account maintenance fee in continental Europe, why should there be charge in Nigeria? These banks keeps our money 1 million, 2 million, 500,000 for months, for years. They don't pay you interest when it is current account, and yet when you make any withdrawal, they charge you. What is the central bank doing regarding this? I think the bankers' tariff should be reviewed, and a new tariff should come out that should categorically state that banks must not charge 1, 2, 3 fees. One of the biggest scams that I have seen of telephone banking, that on your handset you even effect a transfer, the USSD code transfer, yet the bank charge. I think there is a need for the central bank to come out categorically to state that these charges must stop, so that we can encourage people to bank with to keep their monies in the bank, so that our aim of achieving financial inclusion will be achieved. Remember, Kinsley, Nigeria is having almost 200 million population. As of today, we have less than 50 million bank accounts. This is a shame. And it is indeed in the interest of the banks that these charges should be reduced, so that more Nigerians will be able to open bank accounts, and then we can have an economy that is robust and financially all included. Obina did the fact that people may not have the time to look at the minute details when signing into a banking relationship. Remember, Opening an account is like entering into a marriage between a man and a woman. It is not a relationship that you do 1 day or 3 days or 7 days. So obviously it is important that people must realize that they need to look at those minute details so that they don't get covenanted unnecessarily without knowing what exactly the nature and form or terms and condition of the agreement they are signing. Now to your question, the issue of charges, interest charges, bank charges, or other charges associated with lending. Generally, when you approach a bank for a loan, you write a letter, and the letter is accepted by the bank and processed. The bank will give you an offer letter, offer of credit. In that offer letter for the loan or overdraft or credit, whatever that you have applied, in the letter, there are usually terms and conditions of the loan that you are about to get. In this case, and I make bold to state that there is no bank that hides any charge. In every offer letter, offer for credit, the interest rate is stated. The other charges that are associated with the loan are also stated. So customers are clearly in the know. The challenge we have is most customers come in looking for money blindfoldedly, just give me the loan, and I just want the money, where should I sign? And they just sign. So sometimes regrets come after the action because people come into the bank with some level of desperation and they are not usually using what we feel should be used. For example, if you have an agreement with somebody and you are about entering an agreement with a party, you seek for an advice from a lawyer. Why wouldn't people coming to have an understanding with a bank seek an advice from a financial consultant so that the person will be rightly guided? I mean, these are some of the things that should be considered by bank customers so that the case like the one that Dr. Melafia, gave us of a bank trying to rip off a customer, which is, I would say, is an exception to the general rule. I mean, we are talking of quite a number of bank customers. How many do you have such, rascality that he did allude to? So really, bank customers should naturally seek for financial advice from consultants who know better and who will advise them as to what they should do, what they shouldn't do, and how they should do, and how they should not act.
All these frustrations, and of course you just said it, that Nigeria is underbanked for a population of about 200 million with less than 50 million bank accounts. All these are discouraging more banking. How does this, in its effect, affect the cashless program of the economy of Nigeria?
To a great extent. Let me even give you the bad news. Our research sometime in 2004 showed that the 50 million bank accounts he's talking about is Kingsley having 4 bank accounts and 4 different banks.
You keep pointing at me. I probably look prosperous, but I don't have 4 bank accounts like that.
But on a serious note, Dr. Melafia will bear me witness and quite an erudite.
Claiming by faith.
I do.
Dr. Melafia, quite an erudite contribution and sure will be excellent. Will bear me witness that he works at the apex level in the central bank. Check your research, sir. It will show you that many Nigerians, the elite group, which comprises like less than 5% of our population, work in the public service. And theirs is compulsory, you must pay their money into an account. Majority of them are the ones that have bank accounts. The few people you see transact, there is more money, he would know that at some point, Dr. Melafia, you did OMO, open market operation. You had to do mop-up. At some point, going back to Babangida days, it will shock you that there's more money outside the banking system than within the banking system. In fact, I will shock you that with the Isusu system and with what's going on with the micro thing we do in cooperatives and so on, there's more money outside the banking system. So if the banks continue the way they are going, one day we may not need them. Sure. And I'm very, very strict and very blunt on this. The only place you may need them is the day you decide to start a business, which also comes down to capacity building. Maybe I've said it on this one. We need to have a stakeholders meeting. I've said it before. Let's have a stakeholders meeting. Get people like Dr. Melafia to begin to come maybe on air to begin to explain to Nigerians how to start, consolidate, and run a proper business. He just mentioned financial consultant. You may really need a financial consultant. He just mentioned a lawyer. You may really need a lawyer. And it's not an exclusion. And Shoaib, pardon me to differ with you, just like you differed with Dr. Melafia. Yeah. Let me differ to tell you that we are conscious of that. I have been to business school. We are very conscious of the fact that one of the things you shouldn't do, like Kingsley said, is not to go to a bank to collect money to start a business. Start from friends and family. And when you have started your business, be careful your idea that you have patented and you have trademarked your idea before you take it to any bank. Because when they see a very good, we had an experience where you go to market a customer and he tells you, I would never bank as long as this particular person is the MD of this bank. These are facts. It's not an exclusion to the fact. So long and short of it is that, let me say this. Kofi Annan is being buried today, and God bless his soul. He did a great job in the United Nations. I would simply say that there's still hope. And Kofi Annan said we need to keep hope alive and strive to do better. That's Kofi Annan. My people say a hunger that has hope does not kill. Let us hope that our brothers in the banking system would hold hands with us and work to build the GDP of this country. 9.12 trillion budget is simply not there. That's just about $25 billion when Apple is doing over 150 billion. We need to wake up and realize that Nigeria needs to wake up and run.
All right, thank you very much, Obinaya. Dr. Melafia, let's bring you again into the conversation. Some persons would argue that the desperation for profit, the desperation to meet almost the insatiable appetite of shareholders is what drives banks to do the kind of things that they are doing, rather than thinking much more creatively how to help grow the economy, you know, and how to boost production, and therefore raking more money. They're just chasing after little pennies that they can immediately get, and then you're having this kind of ethical issues. Is that necessarily the case? And if that is so, what can be done to reverse this trend and then get on a better and proper footing of banking, such as we find, you know, in other jurisdictions?
Well, before I answer that question, please, Kingsley, if I may, correct a small statistical impression. It is true that we have about 50 million people with bank accounts, or 50 million bank accounts, but it is not over 200 million, because the population of young people or children is probably young people who are not up to the age of 18 or 25 who necessarily don't open bank accounts is also almost 60% of the population. So that 50 million is not over 200 million. It's over something more like 120 million. And if you look at that, we haven't done really very badly in terms of financial inclusion, because the figure was something like 28%, but we've now moved to around 48%. So that 50 million reflects about 48 or 45% of those adults who should be in the financial services sector. Well, to be honest with you, is it because of greed or avarice? That is partly so. And in any business, we must always factor that in. Greed is part of human nature. It is part of original sin. What is imperative is that there should be ethical as well as industry self-regulation that controls some of these things. A lot of people don't know that within the Bankers Committee that meets with CBN every month, there is a group there that is involved with ethics and self-regulation. A lot of these issues are even tackled there before they come into open. You know, that sort of thing, which is good. We need to improve on that and increase on that role. But for me, fundamentally, punishment and sanctions are very important. And banks, given the scenario we are in now, are hardly in the business of lending to the real sector, because they are now involved in buying FGN bonds. It makes more money. You sit at home and you are getting at least 15%. Yes.
Sorry, Dr. Melafia, give us an idea of the kind of punishment that can be meted out to banks.
Now, the latest statistics had it that in 2 years alone, you had something like 49.8 billion raked back from overcharges. I would impose a law that says any bank that extorts people by up to, let's say, 5 billion. Apart from paying that 5 billion, they should also be charged with an additional 5 billion to be put into a fund for whatever purpose that could be used for, maybe even training, financing the work of the Consumer Protection Agency, and so on and so forth. But let the punishment be real and punitive enough that, and I don't agree that they should not be named and shamed. Naming and shaming has worked. Each time people were published who had huge loans that they were not paying back, it had a huge impact. Nobody wants his name in that kind of thing. So list the banks by order, the biggest culprits and the smallest culprit. I know all of them are involved, but some are more involved than others. And list them from the amount and the biggest culprits down to the smallest culprits. It will have a huge impact. And apart from that, you should invoke enough punishment, financial punishment, such that they would now think twice before they do it. Having said that, let's get it very clear. I'm a friend of the banks. I want them to make money. Everybody loves money, but let's make it in a fair, square manner that does not fleece ordinary defenseless people.
All right, Dr. Melafia, thank you very much. We have a torrent of tweets, and we would like to go into those set of tweets now. We took a first set earlier, and I'm sure that that will be bringing us close to the end of the program. Abdullahi Orishabi again has another tweet. Now, the charges are irritating. A bank can deduct card maintenance 3 times in a month, while the customer had paid for the card at the initial stage.
And Festus Akimboyewa says, many Nigerians are happy with their banks on fair charges and don't know that they have legal powers to tackle these banks. Relevant consumer protection agencies must rise up, raise awareness on the legal powers available for Nigerians to tackle their banks on fair charges.
Jack Solomon. Now, excessive charges as well as the lack of transparency and timely communication by banks to customers are detrimental to the successful drive for financial inclusion in Nigeria. The CBN must continue to provide a strong voice to bank customers and moderate the arbitrary charges.
Mobolaji Olajide tweets, I don't mind bank charging reasonably for services. I found at monthly rates, SMS charges are too high. Bulk SMS costs less than 2 naira are available. It should not be 4 naira.
Now, this is from NON's presidency. It says the bank charges and customers' rights are one of the issues NON's leadership has taken up with the CBN. We have requested explanation on this extortion from CBN, which we shall pursue to the hilt.
Amoro Onye Na Ego tweets, I think the masses should take a step by court action on banks who charge outrageous fees.
And this is from Daniel Unwimo. It says, the current bank charges being deducted by banks are outrageous. Now they debit your account indiscriminately. The charges are vague and exorbitant, paying for what one did not subscribe to. All right.
Dele Jack Solomon retweets, in this technological age, there ought to be no excuses for excess charges, except, of course, banks have incompetent and incorrigible employees, or they have so trained them to always do the wrong things with their customers' account. The Nigerian banks must learn to be honest.
Now, this is from Fayome Emmanuel Sunday. First, you told us to get ATM cards to reduce long queues in banks. Next, you started charging for maintenance for a card in my custody. Then stamp duty charge, SMS, balance, and the like. Stamp duty. Am I sending a letter or what? Worse still, the queues are still there. This is legalized fraud.
And Drap tweets, I opened an account with a student ID card, and some months later, my phone was stolen. So I went to get my account update with my new number, and I was turned down because I don't have a national ID card or a driver's license, even when I was with the previous card.
And this is from Paul Ade. It says the deductions are just too many, and some banks are experts at this.
Pastor Arise Monday reply, FD should, that's federal government, should set up a body other than central bank to monitor the commercial bank's relationship with their customers.
Now, this is from Gabriel Oluide. It says, good morning to you all. My bank, in fact, charges me even when I recharge my phone with ordinary 200 naira. Not just once, almost always 65 naira, which is wrong.
Adesanya Ayodele says, I feel someone from the banks should be in the panel to discuss and answer some of these questions. We want to let you know that we actually communicated with banks. We invited, and they up to now have not turned up. In fact, the Consumer Protection organization, we also invited them to speak on behalf of the consumers. They also have not been here.
All right. Femi Joel tweets, now the charges are too much and unexplainable. We have communities where you have only one or two banks and they charge because customers don't have options.
And then Hassan Maji tweets, anytime I transfer money, I'm charged twice, 50 naira interbank charge and 2 naira 50 kobo, 2.5 naira for VAT, then 65 naira charge on ATM use, even if once on other banks' ATM.
Josie has this tweet. It says, I think the issue of excessive bank charges is something to look into. How can my bank charge me for sending birthday messages to me? My ATM in my wallet is also charged for maintenance. How?
And Olawale Babatunde Paul tweets, I hope this program leads to a revolution in the banking industry. We are suffering.
Now, Victor Oyoswama tweets. It says, banks, sorry, we're laughing, but we know that we all feel the pinch, you know. We all feel the pinch. Victor Oyoswama has this tweet. It says, banks are ripping their customers off by multiple and illegal charges. The CBN has made some interventions which usually lead to a refund of illegal charges, but that is not enough. As the banks continue the practice, the CBN as a regulatory body needs to do more.
And Adit Soya Ayodele again says, is it possible to stop getting SMS alerts? I will prefer email, which won't cost me anything.
All right, this is from Babatunde Paul. Now, even with your bank app and using your data, they still charge you money for transfer using the app. Using cards, they also charge you. I'm tired of all of this. That's Babatunde Paul, by the way.
And another Tunde here, but Tunde Otaru tweets, banks apply charges virtually for anything you do on your account. They charge you on using POS, the bank's APP, and even using your phone to do transactions.
Now, Sani Umar tweets, Nigerian banks took things for granted and the charges are just too frequent and too high. And unfortunately, the CBN appears to turn a blind eye.
Fayomi Emmanuel Sunday tweets, first you're told to get ATM cards to reduce, okay, that has been taken. Yeah. And then Buzo will take, I have had several thoughts of closing my account with a particular bank. I never get interest from my savings account, but always get debit with excessive charges. Something should be done to curtail these excesses.
All right. It's Dele Jack Solomon has this last one. It says that, look, we will require the strong will by the banks to voluntarily bring this voluntarily bring all of these charges to a close. Otherwise, regulators, supervisors, and other institutions set up by the government to enforce the law should kick in. Well, as we said, we are pressed for time. Unfortunately, we are unable to take other sets of tweets. We have a lot of them out there that have come in. We apologize. As I said, we are pressed for time. But the points, of course, have been made by our three guests, of course, fairly regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria. Dr. Obadiah Melafia, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, would like to appreciate you for being with us on the program this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Obinaya Ruakba, former banker himself and motivation speaker and entrepreneur expert. Thanks a lot for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Sir. Thank you, sir.
From Lagos, Shuaibu Idris, thanks a lot for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Thanks a lot always for your incisive thoughts. All right, we only just have time now to go over to the Weather Center to check out what the prospects will be like for the